Hello, everyone, and welcome to day 2 of our Master of Content digital event brought to you by the Content Marketing Institute and our wonderful sponsors. I'm Stephanie Stahl. I'm the General Manager here at CMI. So happy to have you all here today. This event is really designed to help you improve your brand experiences, your operations, your content strategy, and so much more. And we've got a really, really good session ready for you. Just a minute. I hope you were able to join our previous sessions. If not, don't worry. They are all available on demand or will be shortly, so you can always go back and catch them. A couple of tips before we start. If you want to ask a question, please do so. You can do so at any time during any of these presentations. Just put them in the Q&A box and hit submit. They will come right to us. The slides will advance automatically. If you've joined us before, you know this drill. Also, look for the folder widget on the console, and you'll find some resources there to take with you, including a copy of today's slides. So please look there before you leave us today. And as always, we love it if you like to share what you're learning with your social media networks. And if you do, please do use hashtag CMWorld. All right, so this is a really hot topic we've got coming up. This is all about using AI and experimentation to really fuel your content strategy and your marketing strategy. And I can't wait to hear what our experts have to say today. Joining us, we have Eve Sanjanito, who's principal at Proficient. Hello, Eve. How are you? We've got Brian Flanagan, who's a digital experience strategist, also at Proficient, and Shafqat Islam, who is the co-founder of Optimize, or co-founder of, let me get this right, co-founder of Welcome, co-founder of Welcome, previously NewsCred, now Optimizely, and also serving as CMO of Optimizely. It's so great to see you, Shaf. I've had the pleasure of seeing Shaf speak many times at Content Marketing World and on digital events, and it's so great to have you here. I'll just turn it over to you, and we'll be ready to take some notes.
Awesome. Well, thank you. And you got it right. A little bit of a complicated history. I've been part of the CMI community for a long time, as Stephanie mentioned. NewsCred, then Welcome. We got acquired by Optimizely. I still run the Welcome business, so the CMP business, but I'm also the CMO of Optimizely. And one of the things I was saying before is, I've built products for marketers my entire life. Now as CMO and being on the other side of the table, I realize, I have a lot more empathy, let's say, for marketing teams and kind of for delivering pipeline, and I'm held accountable for delivering pipeline. And so when we talk about some of the topics that we're going to talk about today, which is, generative AI and experimentation, it's not just theoretical for me. A lot of this is about applying this to real world use cases. And I think, that's why I'm personally very passionate about generative AI as a concept, as a topic, because I think, we've all seen it online. We've probably seen it in social media. It's like gimmicky. We've used ChatGPT. But I think things become less gimmicky and more real when there's real world use cases. And I think for marketing specifically and content marketing within kind of the broader category of marketing, it's very real. This technology is being used today. I think it's potentially very disruptive. And we're excited to dig in. So I'm joined by partners of ours from Proficient, amazing partner of Optimizely. So we have an interesting session teed up for you. Let's just start with some basics. I'll do 4 or 5 slides, and then I'm really going to hand it over to the experts, and Brian will take you through an interesting journey. But just level setting kind of what is generative AI, because I think you've all kind of maybe familiar with certain concepts. To me, it's very simply, it's a subcategory of artificial intelligence that's specifically about generating novel content, so new content, whether that's text, images, videos, slides, whatever type of content, versus simply analyzing or acting on existing data. Because AI has been around for a while. There's a lot of AI analysis tools that have existed forever, but generative AI is about the creation of novel content. And as a reminder, the creation of this content is based on the AI being trained on a certain data set. That data set, that most of us, when we interact with ChatGPT, for example, that data set is kind of text-based content or image content that exists on the internet, whether it's Wikipedia or every publicly available website or news websites. We're talking billions, if not trillions, of parameters that the AI has been trained on. The growth has been pretty crazy. It took 5 days for ChatGPT, which is a very specific use case within kind of generative AI. It's the chat functionality that OpenAI launched. It took 5 days to get to 1 million users, and in less than 2 months, they got to 100 million users. If you look at this tweet on the right-hand side, it compares the growth to kind of some of the fastest growing products that we know, whether it's Instagram, Facebook, Netflix, etc. And you'll see the line on the left is ChatGPT, which is basically a line that's just straight up. It's a vertical line. That's how fast the growth is relative to all these other products. And I think what this growth shows, it's not just excitement, but I believe it can unleash very significant societal and economic transformations in general, but certainly within marketing. What also happened, right? It's not just ChatGPT. That's one use case where you go interact with the chat module on the OpenAI website. But there's generative AI tools that have just exploded and come onto the scene. The number of tools, it's creating a ton of exciting opportunities. But frankly, there's also market confusion because of it. If this reminds you of MarTech, 5 years ago, 10 years ago, if you remember those MarTech landscapes that started with 100 software companies, and NewsCred was one, and then when we rebranded to Optimizely, there was to Welcome, there's probably 1,000 companies, and then at this point, there's tens of thousands, and we're seeing a similar trend within generative AI. This is just one example of a market map that I pulled. And this massive growth is being driven by the advancement of large language models. So you may have heard of this phrase, large language models. It's the underlying technology. And GPT-2 was one of the kind of the big launches of a LLM, and that came out in 2019. Right? So generative AI is not brand new. GPT-2 came out in 2019. GPT-3, I believe, came out in 2020. And a lot of the technology that you see is based on GPT-3. And every new large language model that's released is often 10 or 100 times more advanced than the previous one. So every single year, we're not just getting 10% better in terms of the quality of results or the quality of understanding. In many cases, we're getting 10 times or 100 times better. In fact, right now, most of the tools that you're familiar with or have used are based on GPT-3. I think it has about 100-ish billion parameters. So just think of it's the equivalent of kind of neurons and synapses, like in our brains, the number of connections we make. There's 100 billion of those in GPT-3. GPT-4, which is about to come out, has 100 trillion. So it's like 100x better than GPT-3. So if you already think ChatGPT is amazing, what we are going to see over the next 6 to 12 months is going to just absolutely blow everyone's mind. And I think we can't even comprehend how much better it's going to get. And so kind of the takeaway here is, the current state of what you see in AI is far, far from the end state. And I think what that reminds me is that there's great opportunities, but there's also threats. And even if there's not threats, there's certainly implications on existing marketing practices. I think we might cover some of these later on, but just I put a few out here just that I think about. And, there's a lot of content marketers or marketers on this call. The first one is an obvious one. Like, what's going to be the impact on SEO? Is it going to kill SEO? Is SEO as a practice? Is it going to die? Who knows what's going to happen? But there's certainly going to be impact because, if we can now generate content at massive scale with incredible speed, just creating content is no longer going to be enough to rank in search. And so that's why I have the second point here, whereas information, I think, will be commoditized versus insight will be more valued. So I think there's going to be this shift from information to insight. If as a marketer, you really want to stand out, not just for SEO, but to your human audiences, I think kind of basic information, or, like what is type content or how to type content will be commoditized. And we are going to see content glut, and there's going to be accuracy challenges that come along with that. I think GPT-3 answers a lot of questions very confidently with questionable factual veracity. And so those are just threats, but there's also opportunities, right? I think there's a lot of times that marketers and content people or creative people spend on rote work, which I think can be replaced by, time spent on creative work. I think speed of execution. We're never going to replace humans, but can we kind of give humans superpowers and make them faster and better? I think AI can help us run more or better experiments because we can generate more variation. So it's not just an A/B test. Maybe we can do an A, B, C, D, E test and have 5 different variations to run a better experiment. And obviously we can do more with lower production costs. So I think there's a lot of opportunities, but we also have to be mindful of some of the threats or the implications. And the last thing before I hand over to Brian is, how will this impact the category of what I call broadly content technology? I may have a controversial opinion here, maybe not, but I'll just go ahead and say it. I think this entire category, CMS, content management systems, content marketing platforms, so CMPs, and DAM, digital asset management, I think all 3 categories are going to be completely transformed, and it's going to happen way faster than we think. I think the days of a marketer or a content person sitting in front of a CMS with a blank screen and authoring and typing in content from scratch, I think those days are numbered. I don't know if in even 1 or 2 years we're going to be doing that. I think a lot of the paradigm and the pattern will shift to the upfront part, which is ideation, research, coming up with the insight, the uniqueness of the story. But then the actual writing, a lot of that will be prompted and done by the AI. So I think that it completely changes what is a CMS or what is a CMP, because we're not going to be authoring content in the way that we've been used to doing for the last 10 or 20 years. I think it represents a massive opportunity for vendors or technology in this category, but it's also an existential threat. If we as software companies don't change and evolve, I think can easily get left behind or die. We'll touch upon a little bit of practical use cases at the end, but I'm going to hand over to Brian now, who will walk you through some real world practical applications. And I've seen his slides. They're super fun. So over to you, Brian.
Thanks, Chef. And what you just described really is a new wave of digital transformation that's being powered by generative AI. You guys may have heard of digital first or mobile first, right? Taking that mindset and thinking about how do we do in our digital technologies, or what do we do from a mobile app? Really, we're at the point now where we're thinking AI first. It is pervasive in almost everything that we're doing from a business of creating content, analyzing data, developing new experiences. So it's something that really has to be considered no matter what you're working on. And so, generative AI is new, but it is built upon, some foundational building blocks. And with artificial intelligence, it's not one system that can do everything. You have different models that handle different capabilities. So facial recognition or image recognition. You have cognitive search or speech capabilities. And what generative AI does is it layers new capabilities of that generation on top of those existing blocks. So it uses a collection of these technologies in order to provide really innovative solutions. Just to give you some examples, and I'm going to kind of walk you through some things that you can do with generative AI. There's some groups that we would categorize as, visual media. So that's things like Midjourney or DALL-E, where you can create very rich image content, video content as well, even vector-based content within that. And then you have audio and speech capabilities. Within this is generating music. You can do voice synthesis, so we can create very natural sounding voices and even synthesize or copy somebody's voice. And then as Chef mentioned, ChatGPT and Google Bard, these fall within large language models that have a large set of capabilities. They can handle many different tasks and are really formatted to provide a natural language response, which makes them so easy to work with. And then another category is really content productivity. So there's some specialized tools that help you generate content, review content, and automate some of that process. So going into the first example, something you guys may be familiar with is the ability to create images. So if we say, hey, we want to create a gecko, an image of a gecko posing for a painting in the Renaissance era, we get a really interesting concept here. And through text-based prompts, we can generate very rich imagery and control that with the modification of those prompts. So really amazing capability. Sometimes there's a limitation though in what you get out of that. So with any of the prompts, we really have to focus on how do you communicate to the AI what you want to get out of that. And we call that AI whispering, and giving it some hints of how do you want to set up the environment, what are some of the styles that you want to replicate. So if you want to take that further, there's actually the ability to feed in an image as well. So there's something called the ability to sketch, right? So I can sketch in here and create an image of a bear. It takes my sketch into consideration with the text prompt, and it's able to create a new image that is unique to me. So this is a way that you can actually control it either through text prompts, or you can feed in imagery. When you're creating images, you can also feed in images as well. So that's creative examples, but something more practical you might want to do from a design perspective is create a logo. So some of these tools will give you the ability to generate very rich, intricate logos. In this example, we're asking it to create a logo for a hairdresser. And this is what it comes up with. So there's a lot of detail. We can get this to be vector-based so we can scale it across. And a lot of times this is just an idea, right? I want some ideas. How can I explore different logo concepts very quickly? This is where generative AI can help you excel. You can create very different concepts and explore those very quickly, and then refine that solution over time. So taking that one step further is, what if you want to design an entire website? So we can ask it to come up with a concept for a website. So you see the concept we get here, and it's not very detailed, but it really gives you some ideas of how you might organize the page, what you might feature, some of the color palettes that would be included there. And you can align this to the color palettes of your brand as well, and really, again, generate lots of ideas so you can take that and refine the concept forward. Okay. Another capability on the content creation side is it can develop new content, right? So we can ask it to create a product description for a new product that we have. It's an avocado tester. And the example that we get is it writes the new copy for that. It's highlighting some of the features and capabilities of our product and really making it marketable to our audience. We'll get into how we control that to be a little bit more personalized later. But this is one of the core capabilities, is being able to quickly generate content based on a topic or subject input. Right. So something that people may not be familiar with is the ability to help you within your tasks and in your planning, right? So if we're going to think about creating a customer persona, we can get some guidance from that. So this is a ChatGPT query, and we're asking it to create what do we need to do to create a customer persona? And it gives us some really good guidance. It says, let's gather data first. Let's analyze the data. You want to create a detailed profile, give your persona a face and a name, and then review and refine. So great. So I've got some really great steps I can take action on, and that really helps my planning process, helps me understand how I should proceed. But what if I don't have the time? Well, I could also just ask it to create the persona itself. So in this case, we're saying, create a persona for a Gen Z car shopper. And there's a little formatting here behind the scenes, but the system will actually output a persona with personality, motivation, goals, objectives, and some buying process insights, along with a quote from this fictitious personality. And now, we really believe in the research that is behind personas, so we wouldn't recommend leveraging this persona, but it's really a jumpstart to start thinking about our different audiences and then start to make them real. So it's an interesting capability you can leverage to kind of accelerate the process. So another capability is in that voice and audio area, something called voice cloning. So we have the ability to synthesize commentary based on a stream of events. So this is a very interesting prototype that a game developer put together. So this is a racing game where they've cloned the voices of actual race commentators, and then they're reacting to the events that are happening within the game. And when there aren't events in the game, they actually make up dialogue, right? So they've given some prompts, and then they create dialogue around those prompts. So I'm going to play a video for you just to give you a taste of what that looks like.
We're real NASCAR on Fox commentators that you can listen to every Sunday, but our script and voices are AI generated based on what's happening in the race itself. Sometimes when there's not a lot happening in the race and there's no code to tell us there's been an on-track event like a pass or a crash because nobody's passing each other, like what you're seeing right now, we'll be given miscellaneous talking points to fill dead air just like a real commentator team would. We might talk about the car or the history of the track or the stats of a driver in a given race. But right now, I guess there's something we can talk about. Brian Scott has taken the white flag, and Ognoski is right on his bumper.
So that's an example where, that's not a real race, it's a video game, and the commentators are commentating on that action live. So that's a combination of using ChatGPT to understand those events, create that commentary, and then the voice cloning technology. And that's where a lot of the innovative solutions are coming from when you're combining multiple technologies. Another example here is to generate code, right? So the large language models have the ability to understand and produce code. And this is a very simple example where you say, write React Native code to send requests to GPT. So we want to get data from the GPT model. What's the code that we want to create for that? And it actually develops the code for it and tells you where to put in your token. What do you need to optimize or customize for deploying this on your end, and it gives you that starting point. So this is a very simple example, but it's capable of creating more complex examples. We've done some tests where it can generate an entire web page with the CSS. So if you're trying to create a single web page or a landing page, the large language models are capable of doing that, and also reviewing the code. So there's a lot of cases for troubleshooting code, finding errors, and trying to figure out where that error might be. When you can identify the trouble you're having, and then the large language models will actually help you troubleshoot those things. It can also be used in test planning. So if you're trying to figure out what are the tests that I should write to evaluate my code, it can help you jumpstart that. So we see the capabilities live sort of on the marketing side, but also within the development area. And there's a lot of different use cases. Some additional ones, these are just some other things that you could do with the technology. Not limited to this, but you think about doing deep fakes, which is kind of part of that voice technology, but also image technology on top of that. Something we're working on right now is narrative reporting. So you get to see a dashboard of data, and narrative reporting will just give you a plain language summary of that. So this is what's happening within your organization, sales increase, and you can relate it to, hey, we just had a promotion that ties into the sales, and give you some of that plain language feedback. So these capabilities are really emerging, and some of the use cases are unproven because, as I mentioned, the real power is combining multiple technologies and trying to create something new with these new capabilities. So how we make it real, I'm going to transition this over to Eve to talk about, how do we really apply this to a real world scenario?
Thanks, Brian. So one of the use cases beyond some of the samples that Brian just mentioned that we think you can leverage generative AI and that for ideation, a number of factors, is an area we call journey science. Journey science is a proprietary discipline that we offer within Proficient, really to help organizations design customer-centric experiences that are journey-focused. And it has a few pillars focused on data-driven evidence, research-based insights, and continuous optimization. There's a few areas we wanted to talk about that in. Brian had already mentioned where in the research and persona and segmentation side you can use generative AI in order to generate ideas. We certainly do recommend primary research in order to inform kind of your customer-centric approach, but certainly the ideation piece of it can play into that, and what Shaf mentioned earlier on the insight side of the equation. I wanted to dive a little bit deeper into the two areas on the right, which is personalization and experimentation. And this is really where you can get into delivering individualized customer experiences, as well as experimentation around sort of validating predictions and optimizing experiences in general. In terms of personalization drivers, just to provide a little bit of context before we delve into some of the ideation you can do there, there's various different drivers behind this, this focus area. So one of them is context. That's when you're considering the specific environmental factors around an individual user story. Persona is really aligning to that user's needs, like who they are and some of the characteristics that define them. Then there's the behavior factor. Based on what they've been doing previously in your digital experience, what kinds of things can we be surfacing based on our understanding of what they might be interested in based on what they've been spending their time on. And then there's the journey piece, which is really an understanding of looking at the customer journey to determine where a particular customer fits within that journey and targeting personalized experiences and or content based on that. Just for a little further foundation, personalization can be applied in a lot of different ways. So at the sort of foundational level, you're really looking at rules-based personalization, which is just things that are oriented around persona and contextual. You know, what device are they using? What location are they in? How can I personalize around some of those elements? On the as you sort of expand further into the evolution of that, you're looking at automated type personalization. What kinds of content can I surface based on real-time insights, based on timing, time of day, time of usage, et cetera? What are some of the trends that we're seeing that we can surface personalization around? And then at the sort of more advanced level, you're really looking at areas of like, how can I apply the persona, the personalization at sort of a journey level? So that just gives you a framework before we dive in and talk about some of the ideation that can happen there. So one of the things, as some of the other examples that Brian had shown, one of the things that we wanted to look at as an example was writing a product description for, in this case, we selected Toro Time Cutter Mower. And we wanted to see what kinds of ideation and insights we could get about targeting moms as one initial audience, and then how that might cross-reference with dads. So you can see the example that we have here, we've highlighted a few key points within the copy, which is, references to making lawn care a breeze, speed, precision, and comfort, looking at a smooth ride, highlighting the ease of use, the reliability, and the efficiency. And that's an idea about how to sort of like target and personalize to a mother who might be interested in this product. And then if we generate the same request, but ask about targeting dads, we're looking at different points being highlighted to really appeal to that audience segment. So as you can see in the highlighted text, power, durability, and reliability, the built to withstand tough conditions, efficiency, and built to last are all features that are being highlighted here. So it starts to begin to allow you to get some ideation about how you might differ some of your own approach in content marketing based on who you're targeting. On the experimentation side, we want to sort of give a little bit of context there first too. There's a lot of different approaches you can take to experimentation. In this case, we just wanted to highlight some of those. One is your typical split testing, A/B testing, where you're looking at controls versus one versus the other to see how one scenario or content type or positioning may have been performing versus another. You have reinforcement learning, where one or more variables are being tested within a live environment to provide a feedback loop into more predictive modeling. There's path exploration, looking at where in the journey flows of an experience someone is having are their opportunities that can be optimized further, and evaluating the effectiveness of that. And then delving into areas of machine learning like exploitation, where you can capitalize on those experiment findings to optimize further for success. So with that as a framework, we also wanted to look at what kind of ideation we could be leveraging for experimentation. So one area that we know is often a challenge in experimentation, especially advanced experimentation programs over time, is like generating hypotheses that are worth testing. So in this case, we queried ChatGPT to ask us what kinds of hypotheses we can create for this page, following on the theme from Toro. And so you can see this is a page, it's a product page that is talking about some of the features and capabilities. It has some customer reviews on it, things like that. And when we ran that query, we received a number of hypotheses. We've highlighted two here. One is the idea of emphasizing the the mower's environmental sustainability features in order to target a segment of environmentally conscious customers. So you're getting a bit of personalization while you're generating experimentation hypotheses. And there's also supporting ideas on what experiments you could actually run to do that. And then the second hypothesis being personalizing the product page's content based on location or browsing history. And in that case, you're able to sort of feature things like where lawnmowers are typically more expensive, offering a price discount. So it, again, helps as an ideation engine. In some cases, and we'll talk about this too in a few moments, it generates ideas that based on when it crawled and reviewed the page, that might not be relevant. So you have to mine through them and pull out the ones that are going to be relevant to your overall experimentation model. Another thing we wanted to delve further into is, what if I just wanted to do, really hone in on a specific focus area like increasing conversions, and what kind of tests could I run to increase those? And so you can get a number of additional ideas. There are some of the simple ones like headline, product image, product description, price, call to actions. These are common test scenarios in order to increase conversions, but you can also get into more advanced ideation around this. And one of the things that we delve further into said, okay, what about if I did decide I wanted to really focus on headlines and do a number of test scenarios around that? And I really wanted those to be focused on audiences so that I'm tying in that personalization opportunity. In that case, we were able to generate a number of different persona-focused headline ideas, one being focused on the environmentally conscious consumer. And so you can see we were able to generate 3 different ideas that focus in on themes that are believed to be of importance and or resonance for that audience. So eco-friendly, reducing carbon footprint, going green, things of that sort. And then moving more into the tech-savvy individual, highlighting different features and or benefits. So, leveraging high-tech capabilities, experience advanced lawn care technology, revolutionizing your lawn care routine. And we also know from some of the ideation that we generated that there's Bluetooth-enabled capabilities and things of that sort within this mower. So those are other areas that could be highlighted and expanded upon as well. And then, for the budget-conscious consumer, what are the types of things that you might highlight there? Pretty straightforward around affordability and efficiency, but really just helping to generate those insights that'll allow you to really customize it, but not starting from a blank page. So those are some of the ways that we sort of wanted to share that you could also use it in the experimentation context of your content strategy along with personalization. One of the things we want to sort of, as we wind down here, talk about is the challenges related to generative AI. So one of the big ones is accuracy. As you'll see when you use this technology, there's lots of ideas and generated concepts, whether that be visual concepts and other kinds of concepts that Brian talked about, but it may not be high quality. You have to mine the information, and you've got to make sure that you're identifying errors or inconsistencies. And so it can cause a lot of problems if you don't actually leverage that in that way. Quality is another factor, right? Sometimes you get more helpful answers than others. And that's an important thing to make sure that we're looking at. And there's a dependency on that diversity of the data, resulting in possible bias or lack of originality. And you don't want to do that. You don't want to become part of the content strategy noise out there. Credibility is another factor. So we know that Google and other content evaluation tools are detecting AI-generated content. Shaf mentioned earlier, SEO is a big factor in this. How is this all going to affect SEO over time? And we know from all of our experience in SEO that Google values subject matter expertise in its authoring and its content rating. So that has to continue to be a focus and an area of consideration. Predictability. So how you query can make a big difference. It can require multiple attempts in order to get ideas that are absolutely useful to you. And it can make it challenging to identify and correct errors or biases depending on the different ways that you're querying and the information that is being sort of surfaced as a result. And then lastly, ethical concerns, models that can be used to generate content that is harmful or offensive. So there's a lot of newsworthy examples of that from the past and other scenarios like this. And so you've got to be really careful that you're leveraging the technology in a way that is going to not be damaging to your brand or to individuals in general. So with that in mind, really wanted to sort of leave with the note, while all of this is, sort of new area of focus and providing a lot of options for innovation and is going to cause disruption and shifts, it's really important to consider those considerations and to make sure that humans are involved in order to review, revise, finalize, and synthesize the outputs that you get. And with that, I'm going to turn it back to Chef.
Yeah, great. I think we're winding down. This is the last slide, and then we may have a few minutes for questions. Wanted to take it from theoretical to a little bit more practical. A lot of this is not just kind of in our heads anymore or in standalone tools like ChatGPT. I think where it gets exciting for marketers is if we can bring this technology into the workflows where you're operationalizing kind of your content today. So think about if you're in a CMP and you're doing your planning for your editorial calendar, you are starting to create a blog post. Imagine if all of this technology was available right there to help you author, to help you pick images, to help you test the subject lines. I love the example that you've just showed around the 15 different subject lines for 3 different personas. Like, that would have taken a lot of time for a human to come up with, at least get the creative juices flowing by proposing all of those in the tools that you work. And so at Optimizely, we already have some of this available in our CMP, in our CMS, and our DAM. So you can already do things like create images, both like photorealistic images and illustrations. We have headline variation creation, although not to the level that Eve showed. I think it's probably call it maybe 6 months behind in terms of the tech, and I'll talk about that in a second. We have article summaries, outlines, and full blog posts that you can create. And so this is available today. Now, we are committed to investing because the technology and of the large language models evolve so fast. When we initially launched text-based generative AI, when was it, 6 to 9 months ago, it was on GPT-3, but one of the older kind of language models. And so today the language model is 100 times better. So we're upgrading the text-based language model currently, but it's already available. Images, we use Stable Diffusion, so we have the latest version of that. So you can try this out if you're interested. Kind of hop onto our website at optimizely.com, ping someone on the website, and we'll get in touch. We'll show you if you're a customer, talk to your CSM, or if you want to just reach out to me on Twitter or through email at any time, please do, because we're always looking for feedback on how to make this more real and more practical for you. So that's all I have. I'm going to pass it back to Stephanie. We may have time for like 1 or 2 questions.
Yeah, we've got some good ones here. I'll try to summarize a little bit because 2 of them are kind of hitting on the same topic. Laura is asking, in creating a persona for an ad, you provide ideation and insights. Would that persona only exist for you? Or could others using AI have that person appear in their ads? And suddenly it's not unique, right? So the question is the persona, it's fictitious, but is it going to be somebody that might be recognizable? And Audra asked a similar question. I think it was when you were talking about, Brian, when you were talking about art and how you could put in that really great drawing of the bear and get an image. Is it unique? So that's the uniqueness. Let's talk about uniqueness here.
Absolutely. The outputs are unique. They're like snowflakes. So it is that only that instance when it generates it that will be unique to your inputs and prompts. And even if you put the same prompt in, you won't get the same results. So there is a calculation that looks at some of the randomness that it employs into it, which can be frustrating at times, because if you're trying to refine an image or you're trying to refine some text concept, it can be difficult to repeat it. So there's definitely some techniques that you can use to replicate some of those results, but they are unique at that instance. So it would be that output that you take and then you use it for your own. For somebody else, if they wanted to create that persona, it's going to create a unique output for them.
Yeah. The one thing I'll just add is while it's unique, of course, this is all based on training data, right? And there's elements of that training data that may show up. For example, in our image creation, if you prompt it to say, create an image of basketball sneakers in the style of Basquiat or a specific artist, you're going to start seeing influences of that artist in the images. So I think by definition, Brian's absolutely right. Every image, every piece of text is unique, but you will see influences. And this is a gray area that I think a lot of people are struggling with. First of all, do you credit the training data and the original artist? Are they compensated? So I think this is an evolving space, but in general, there's unique. One other thing you can do for images is, once you generate, let's say, an image or a photo of a person, you can then take that fictitious person you create and then place that person in different settings as well. So there's a lot of techniques available to reuse your unique persona that you created over and over again in different settings. So there's kind of interesting applications.
That's a good idea. It kind of reminds me of my early days in print journalism when, stock photos and such would be used. And one time our competitor used the same photo that we had in something, and we were just horrified. We're like, no, that can't happen. It was print, we couldn't change it, right? So
one thing I will just add one thing. Keep in mind, some people do say, well, it's trained on all this data, so how unique is it? Think about how humans learn. As a human, how do we learn? We read books, we consume content on the internet, we go to Wikipedia, we talk to people, and we consume all of this data, and that's our training data, and then we build on it. And this, how we're training AI, is not that dissimilar for how humans learn.
Yeah, that's great. Marty's got a great question too about, sort of there is this universe of content that's used to train, like we're talking about. What about industry specific inputs? Do you see that as a future too? So if I'm in manufacturing or financial services or whatever, pick an industry, that it can really learn what's important in my industry versus just general.
Yeah, I'll take the first stab at that. And definitely these models can be trained on your data within your industry or your organization's data. The different platforms have different approaches to do that. And there's some concern around using the OpenAI platform because it's going to learn from the data that you feed it. So you start to educate the entire platform. Other solutions allow you to wall it off a little bit more. And you can say, hey, I'm going to create my own instance in order to be trained on the content that I want to train you on. We're doing that in automotive as an example. And the great thing is the model itself understands what car name is, what four-wheel drive is. We don't have to teach it all those things which we would call entities. So we're just training it on our organization or the organization we're working with, their specific data around specifications and benefits. So it's leveraging that as an input and making that model smarter with the data we enhance on top of that. But there's a lot of the foundational things that we don't have to do anymore. And we used to have to do that with AI solutions, is tell it, what is a wheel? What's a tire? What's the difference? What is a car name? What's a trim name? And so a lot of that knowledge comes within that solution. You have to validate some of those things, but it's really an accelerant for us.
Right. And Eve, you talked a bit about, sort of how human and AI, need to work together and such. David has a good question about, AI doesn't have any sort of lived experiences, but so how do you see content evolving to better do what AI can't do? I assume us humans actually.
Yeah, I think Chef touched on this earlier, and I concur with all of what he was sharing, which is I think where the commoditization piece of content is going to evolve. We're not starting with a blank piece of paper, but I think the importance of the uniqueness and subject matter expertise and the sort of differentiation that your own research brings to the equation are where it's going to evolve on the content side. I think some of those more baseline types of content are going to be leveraging this more, but you're still going to need to differentiate your content. You're still going to need to do that. And I see this right now more as an ideation input to that than I do as sort of an end state output. Even on some of the research things that Brian was mentioning and that we covered on personas, to get to the deepest, most effective type of persona takes insights from your actual customers, not just a general amalgamation. So it helps you with ideation and a starter, but I don't think that that's still the ideal end state.
Yeah, one tip that we always used to give kind of content marketers before any of this generative AI stuff even came around was think about what's unique about you as a brand or as a company. And one of the things that's unique about you is the data that you have, whether it's your customer data, your research data. If you're a car company, you have so much amazing automotive data. For us as Optimizy, we are the biggest experimentation laboratory in the world. We have more results and data from experiments run, millions, billions of data points. So like, could we create content based on proprietary data that only we have access to? And that's really what's going to start differentiating kind of the human layer on top of anything that the AI can create. And we can feed the data to the AI and then again get a head start. But I think that's going to be the differentiator.
I think that already is a differentiation. I think it's becoming even more as this evolves. Yeah.
Love it. That is a great point to end on as we're out of time. Thank you. And I think too, for marketers, there's a comfort level to see this built into the tools they're using every day. So having them built into optimize these tools or whatever, there's a comfort level that, okay, it's here. These are my tools. I don't have to go figure it out, so lots of excitement to come ahead of us. So thank you all for your expertise and this great presentation. Folks, join us over at thecontentmarketinginstitute.com. We'll be following this very closely all year long and certainly up to our big event in September, Content Marketing World. And a quick reminder, this and our other sessions today and the one that's coming up in just a bit will be on demand in about 24 hours after the live session. So you'll see this in your inbox tomorrow in about 24 hours or so. All right. Thank you all. Stay tuned for tomorrow. We've got more great content. Have a great day, everybody.